Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brooke, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the Annovis Investor Webcast. Today, we will provide a comprehensive update on the company's recent achievements, ongoing clinical programs, and strategic initiatives for 2025. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that today's call may include forward-looking statements. These statements are based on current expectations and assumptions and are subject to risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results to differ materially from those projected. For more information on the risks and uncertainties related to Annovis Bio's business, please refer to the forward-looking statements and the company's latest SEC filings. To guide us through today's presentation, I am pleased to introduce our speaker, Dr. Maria Maccecchini, the founder, president, and CEO of Annovis Bio. Dr. Maccecchini has been a pioneer in neurodegenerative disease research, and her leadership has been instrumental in driving the company's mission forward. We have also received many thoughtful questions via email ahead of today's webcast. Additionally, during the webcast, participants will see the Q&A icon in their taskbar. By clicking on this icon, you can type in your question and choose to submit it with your name attached. Without further ado, I will turn the call over to Dr. Maria Maccecchini.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for joining us for this webcast. It's the end of the year, and it's getting towards the holiday season, and so I thought that maybe I give you an update, first looking backward to what did we do this year, and then looking forward to what are we going to be doing next year. And all of you are very interested in how is this going to go move forward. So this starts badly. Next. And it's not moving. So I want to go back to 2018 because it has been quite a while that research people, especially in universities, have suggested that Alzheimer's is not just A beta and plaque and not tau and tangles, but is actually a mix of a number of different neurotoxic aggregating proteins and other indications, other diseases. So as you can see, there is A beta, plaque, tau, tangles. There is alpha-synuclein and TDP-43. Those are neurotoxic aggregating proteins. And there is vascular disease. Vascular dementia is very important. And then other. So really, saying that we are just doing one neurotoxic protein at the time is maybe not quite enough. Now, interestingly enough, our drug kind of progressed with research. Originally, we thought it was inhibiting APP, which makes amyloid. But then we found it was inhibiting tau, alpha-synuclein, TDP-43. And actually, today we know that it inhibits all the toxic proteins that are in the brain of an Alzheimer or a Parkinson's patient. So it's interesting to see how research on our drug have kind of evolved and show the same thing. So let's go to Alzheimer's disease. As you all know, we did a phase 2/3 study. And when we looked at the ITT population, our two primary endpoints, ADAS-Cog11 and ADCS-CGIC, were not statistically significant. You do see that, in fact, in ADAS-Cog11, all the conditions, including placebo, improved quite a bit. But that, of course, means the drug wasn't any better than placebo. In CGIC, we really don't see much. However, thankfully, in the last year, a new test was developed. The original test to look for Alzheimer's disease in a person, the very old one was to have a dead person and open the brain. And then we got to PET scans. PET scans see plaque in the brain. And then we got to CSF, looking at A beta in CSF. And as of a year ago, we can actually look at plaque and tangles by measuring p-tau 217 in plasma. So it's a lot less invasive. It's easy to measure. And that's what we did with our Alzheimer patients. And we see that if we do take the patients that have the p-tau 217 level, we see that in more advanced MMSE 16 to 21, again, there is no response. But in early Alzheimer patients, we have a beautiful dose-dependent improvement in cognition, which is statistically significant from baseline and from placebo. Now, we have been criticized that this is a subgroup. Yes, it is a subgroup. So in order to be sure it wasn't cherry picking, we looked at that subgroup very carefully. And what we saw is that if we look at patients with ApoE4 and non-ApoE4, in both populations, the drug improves cognition. And then we looked at patients that were on acetylcholinesterase inhibitors and were not on acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. And again, we see that in both populations, the drug works. And then we looked at a whole bunch of different conditions. So we looked at age. Overall is on top. This is a forest plot. And here you see that overall, the drug works. And then you see in age it works, in negative ApoE4 patients, in positive ApoE4 patients, in Hispanics, in not Hispanics, in females, in males, and Blacks. We only had 4 patients and no placebo, so we couldn't calculate the forest plot, and then it works in whites. So basically, we see that this drug, buntanetap, works in subgroups of the subgroups, which means this really gives us confidence that our original subgroup was not cherry picking, because within that subgroup, everybody works and responds to the drug. Now, I already showed this several times. The drug is safe across all doses and placebo in ApoE4 carriers and non-carriers. And this is where we are going. So we went to the FDA, and the FDA said that we could do a 6-month study for symptomatic and an 18-month study for disease modifying. And I think I said that to the street. But we went back and we looked at statistics. We looked at how we could combine the studies, went back to the FDA, and we have agreed to do a double study in one study. So we do an 18-month study. We analyze the data at 6 months. If the data is good, we can file an NDA for symptomatic. We continue the study for another 12 months. If the data is good at 18 months, we can file an NDA for disease modifying. Now, when do we want to start the study? We already have a date. We have the sites. We have some patients. We're starting it at the end of January. We also want to do an open label study. And the open label study will start in March. And the open label will not just be for Alzheimer's, but it will also be for Parkinson's patients. So this is a double open label for Alzheimer's and for Parkinson's patients. And this is the Alzheimer's study. So we are looking at recruiting 750 patients, 375 on placebo, 375 on 30 mg of buntanetap. Basically, we are recruiting patients that we pre-screen for the p-tau 217 label or level in plasma. That means we are sure we have Alzheimer patients. That, of course, will give us more screen failures, but it's very important because, as we know from our phase 2/3 study, if we don't have Alzheimer patients, we do not get the data we need to show that the drug works. Then the age is 55 to 85, and the MMSE is 21 to 28, so it's early Alzheimer patients. I want to point out the key primary endpoints. We are doing 2 co-primary endpoints, ADAS-Cog13 and ADCS-IADL, and then we will do volumetric MRI specifically for the disease modifying portion. So for Alzheimer's, we're pretty set. We have submitted the protocol to the FDA. We expect to get 30 days will be over this year, before the end of the year, so we can start our study in January. Basically, we are doing a 6/18-month study. We really rely very strongly on our subgroup analysis that showed that p-tau217 patients had Alzheimer's and did respond to buntanetap. And well, we will have the 6 months data after 1.5 years, which if it is, as we hope, if it is good, and if it's statistically significant in both primary endpoints, we can file an NDA for symptomatic, and then continue the study for a year to then look at disease modification. So I wanted to give you an idea of who we are working with. This is our Alzheimer team. As you see on the left, that is us. Those are the people that work with us, in the company. Then in the middle, we have advisors. We have KOLs that are experts in Alzheimer's disease. They review the protocol, they review our patients, they review what we do, they help us with the FDA. They have done a fantastic job. And we're pretty sure that thanks to them, the protocol that we submitted to the FDA is good. And then we have what I call collaborators, CROs, vendors. Putting together a clinical study is an enormous amount of pulling together different parts. Because if you look at this, it doesn't look that many people, but the collaborators, every single one of them, probably has between 3 and 15 or 20 people working for this study. So this was a 3-month study. Our 6/18-month study will be even bigger. It sounds easy, just pick 750 patients, give them some drugs, send them home, make a test. It's a lot of work. And especially since our phase 2/3 didn't meet primary endpoint, we really put a lot of thinking and a lot of effort into making sure that the next study will meet primary endpoint. So let's go to Parkinson's disease. You have seen this graph in the whole ITT population. The overall trend was down. Patients get worse in cognition, but if treated with our drug, they don't change their cognition, they remain normal. And if we take the patients that already have a cognitive impairment, as measured by their MMSE, which is 20 to 26, we see that their cognition actually gets worse by 1.5 points. And if we treat with our drug, we see a dose response in getting better to getting fine. Now, unfortunately, when we look at our primary endpoints, which was UPDRS 2 and 3, again, we don't see an effect. UPDRS 2 has no change between placebo and treated. It looks like this is worse, but the numbers are so minusculous that it really doesn't make any difference. And in terms of UPDRS 3, there is also no difference between placebo. Oh, okay. I understand that some people don't hear me, so I'm trying to talk louder. So then we came up, for the ones of you who remember, with a PIGD subgroup that showed beautiful data, but it was only 100 patients, with a -3 years group that also showed good data, and it was 200 patients. And here we have a group of 367 that shows excellent data. In fact, in the per protocol group, we have an improvement in UPDRS part 2, 3, 4 total, and again, MMSE. Now, why haven't we already run to the FDA with this data? We are trying to figure out what is the commonality between the PIGD group, the -3 year group, and the per protocol group. And we have spent a lot of time on Alzheimer's. So now that Alzheimer's is kind of cleaned up, we are going to go back to Parkinson's and figure out what group, how best do we find our next population. And the good news is 367 patients is a nice group, but it would be really wonderful if we had a very solid selection criterion for the next study. And unfortunately for Parkinson's, there is no blood biomarker that we can use to say, do they have Parkinson's or not? The only one would have been CSF, but we did not do CSF, so we really don't know whether our patients had Parkinson's or not. So we're still working on it. It's coming. And again, the good news is buntanetap in Parkinson's is very safe. And as a summary for Parkinson's, the per protocol population shows improvement in UPDRS2, 3, 4 total, and MMSE, which we can take to the FDA, but I'd really like a little bit better understanding of what's happening in Parkinson's. Now, you remember the slide I showed you of everything we did in Alzheimer's? So starting this week, we are going to go back to Parkinson's, put together a group of KOLs, come up with a better plan, go to the FDA, and then ask again for a 6/18-month study. And basically, we think that we're going to do the exact same short-term symptomatic 18 months disease modifying for Parkinson's as we do for Alzheimer's. So all of you have been, not all, but most of you have been asking me, how on earth do you live with no money? Well, I'm getting good at it, but okay, fine. So we have 12 million cash on hand. We have had 12 million since June of this year. And the reason is that we have an ELOC and we have been drawing down money. With the money we have been drawing down from the ELOC, we have actually prepared 300,000 pills, 23 kilos of API. We have paid the upfront fee for the Alzheimer clinical trial. We're ready to go. Of course, the 12 million won't get us there. So as of this morning, we just put in place a 50 million ATM facility that will help us. Just to go back to the ELOC, we have raised a total of 14 million from the existing ELOC, and we're planning to draw down another 30 million. So between the ELOC and the ATM, we have some money, but ideally we would like a lot more. And in fact, we are working on 3 financing deals that are over 200 million if they come to fruition. We feel very comfortable that we have the money for the Alzheimer's study and the open label study. And these financings will be reported anywhere between the end of the year and April. So you will hear shortly how we're getting the 200 million. Now, some of you have asked how much does a 6/18-month study cost, and it's about 70 million. And that will be about the same, be it for Alzheimer's, be it for Parkinson's. So we are looking at 70 million for the Alzheimer, 40 million for the open label study, which is a 3-year open label study. And then if and when we get to Parkinson's, we'll have another study. So thank you very much. And now it's time for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Maccecchini, for that comprehensive update on Annovis Bio's recent achievements and strategic initiatives for 2025. Like you mentioned, we will now move to the Q&A portion of the webcast. As a reminder, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature in your webcast interface located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We have received many great questions in advance, and our team has worked to consolidate similar ones to ensure we cover as much ground as possible. I will read each question, and Maria will provide the answers. If your question hasn't been addressed, feel free to submit it using the Q&A feature, and we will do our best to address it at the end. So let's get started. Question one, Maria, when will the open label study for Parkinson's disease begin and who will be able to enroll? Would a compassionate use pathway be considered for patients in the meantime?
Yes, I got a lot of questions from previous patients. When can we come back? Can you give us the drug? And yes, I heard you. So we are starting the open label study in March. And while we haven't really had a Parkinson's meeting with the FDA, we did ask them if we could do an open label for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And they said yes. So because the drug is safe, they don't have to review the Parkinson's data separately. So we are opening it to everybody who has been in any of our studies starting end of March.
Great. Should we move to question two? How do you plan to finance the upcoming phase 3 trials? Are you considering large fundraising efforts, smaller staged raises, or alternative options like exclusive rights sales or partnerships?
So the simple answer is yes, 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 yes. We are considering everything. However, we have, as I just told you, an ELOC and an ATM. Together, we can draw down about $30 million. And we are working on 3 financings that together should give us over $200 million. Now, granted, one is more sure than the other, but we are very confident we have the money for the Alzheimer's and the open label. One of you, or maybe 2 of you, have asked that maybe our chairman can comment on our situation. And I would like to introduce to you Michael Hoffman, who has been with us for over 10 years, so he knows the company really well. And Michael can tell you what he thinks about us. Michael?
Thank you, Maria. So obviously at the top of everyone's mind is financing, given the limited resources we have. But I will assure you all that because we now feel highly confident with the tau test, that we can identify Alzheimer's patients and that we know that the results from the Alzheimer's patients are statistically significant. The risk is, can we replicate that data in a phase 3 trial for Alzheimer's? We feel highly confident that we can. And as a result, we are actively exploring at the board 3 specific opportunities to arrange the financing we need to complete the Alzheimer's trial. Unfortunately, because we can't really speak to the specifics of those with any of you at this point, we're going to have to wait until we can officially tell you what those results are. But we will let you know as soon as practically we can, which, as Maria said, will be sometime in either the next few weeks or the next few months.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to question 3 then. When is the FDA meeting to discuss buntanetap in Parkinson's disease, and when do you plan to begin the next study?
So we are, as I said, we are pretty much done with the planning of the Alzheimer's study. Going forward, Alzheimer's will need a lot of execution, but the planning is pretty much done. And so we can now go back and do the planning and the understanding and the input of the key opinion leaders in Parkinson's. And we think we'll be done maybe with a little bit of luck this year, but let's be more realistic, in January. Then we will file for a Type C meeting with the FDA, which will be granted in 2 to 3 months. And then after that, we can start the study 2 months after that. So we really plan to start the Parkinson's study in summer. Now, remember,
Great.
I have to raise the money for the Parkinson's study. Right now, I'm very sure about Alzheimer's and open label.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Why was the FDA Parkinson's disease meeting pushed until 2025?
It wasn't pushed. It's just that realistically, we cannot do everything. I'm told, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'd like to point out that our clinical studies are very fast. We are about twice as fast as other people's clinical trials, but we can't do it any faster. And it was the reason we fast-tracked Alzheimer's is we had a very good way of knowing who of our patients had Alzheimer's and who did not. And so with the tau test, we were able to move really fast. As I was telling you, there is no such test for Parkinson's. So if we have patients in there that don't have Parkinson's, we're still trying to figure out how to get rid of them. So we didn't really push Parkinson's aside. We just cannot do two studies 100% simultaneously. So the minute Alzheimer's is on its way, we'll do Parkinson's.
Thank you. Next question. Please explain the per protocol population inclusion criteria and the significance of the data. Has the data been well received by key opinion leaders and others?
Yes. Remember I said we have Parkinson's patients that don't have Parkinson's. And there are about 15 sites in Florida who recruit people off the streets. They also recruited Alzheimer patients that didn't have Alzheimer's. But as I already said, we could exclude them. Well, they also recruited Parkinson's patients that don't have Parkinson's. In fact, if you remember, the -3 years was really done in a lot of ways to exclude patients that didn't have much of a history of Parkinson's disease. The per protocol is the same thing. The sites that recruited everybody off the street really did not follow the protocol. So interestingly enough, when we started looking at who did not follow the protocol, the same sites that we had to can for Alzheimer's showed up for Parkinson's. So they're people that didn't follow protocol. Okay, they didn't take the pills. They came in late. They didn't take the blood. They didn't do the study the way it was supposed to do. But the reason we're still trying to find a better way of defining patients is that per protocol is not a very good selection.
Thank you. Question 6. The most recent efforts for Annovis appear to focus on buntanetap's application for Alzheimer's disease. Do you feel the data is stronger for Alzheimer's than Parkinson's?
No, I think the data is the same. It's just that in Alzheimer's, we were able to eliminate the wrong people. And in Parkinson's, we're still trying to do that. The data for Parkinson's is excellent. Just think, in the whole ITT population, we see an improvement in cognition. And we weren't even looking for that. So we know the drug works. We just need to figure out how to do the study so we don't run into the same problem.
Perfect. All right, next question. When will recruitment for a new Alzheimer's disease study begin?
January.
Okay.
By the way, for the patients that are interested in that, Sarah here has been doing a fantastic job keeping track of all of you, and she is going to actually send you updates when what sites open and where you can go. And then you can see it on clinicaltrials.gov.
Great. Are there plans for interim unblinded results during the 18-month part of the Alzheimer's disease trial?
Yes, but we don't call it interim. We call it a full readout. Because if it was an interim, we could not file an NDA. So yes, we will be blinded. I will be blinded, but a group of statisticians will be unblinded. They will look at the data, and if the data is good, we'll file it with the FDA.
Great. Next question. How confident are you in repeating Alzheimer's disease trial results within the tau test?
I'm 100% confident. That tau test is the solution, was the solution to our problem. And the fact that it is quite easy to do, you take some blood, you send it to a lab, they measure tau. And they come back and say, low tau, healthy, high tau, you have Alzheimer's. So, and the data, that's why I showed you the forest plot. That's why I showed you the additional data. Because if it was cherry picking, it would not reproduce through all these different groups in that group. Remember, it works in women and men, in age, in on drugs, not on drugs. It works in whites, gray, Asians, blacks. So yes.
Perfect. Question 10. Will testing sites for the trials be established in Europe?
No, no, we are not going to Europe for Alzheimer's.
Thank you. Do you expect full and rapid enrollment of the upcoming 6-month Alzheimer's disease trial? And are you hearing of substantial interest from patients and or their family members?
Yes, I mean, that's actually one of the very rewarding parts of my job. It is that patients want to come into the study and they say they felt better. They say they want to be in the study. And because the drug works in earlier patients, they also have an opinion. If it worked in more advanced patients, will be more their caregivers who would have an opinion. So we see absolutely no problem recruiting. We have recruited very, very fast for our phase 2/3. We think we're going to recruit very, very fast for our phase 3.
Great. Is Annovis exploring combination therapies for buntanetap with GLP-1 drugs, Trulicity or similar? And have there been discussions with companies like Eli Lilly or Novo?
Yes, all of the above. We are doing a few more studies in mice to figure out the intricacies of these combinations and understand the mechanism better. Because in my very simplistic way, I say it's health in a bottle. And the reason it's health in a bottle is to be healthy, you need good circulation. You need Viagra or any hypertensive drug. Then you need good sugar metabolism, and GLP-1 will do that. Now, insulin may do that, but we didn't test that. Besides, insulin is harder to get because you have bigger changes in sugar. So you need something that improves the circulation, sometimes something that improves your sugar metabolism. And then you need a drug that protects nerve cells from dying, which is our drug. However, that's a simplistic way. Now we are doing another study to look exactly at the mechanism and if there are actually synergies by measuring synergies in the brain of mice. Yes.
Thank you. Question 13. What will be the dose of buntanetap for the open label extensions?
30 mg.
Perfect. Okay. Next question, 14. How will Parkinson's open label patients be notified?
Sarah, same as Alzheimer patients. Sarah is going to send everybody emails. Oh, and then there's going to be a news release. Okay, so if you're not on Sarah's email list, there's going to be a news release. We start the open label study. And then you can contact the site you went to. And most of those sites, I'm not saying all of them, but most of those sites will actually be part of the open label.
Great. Question 15. Do you think the FDA will ask you to submit an NDA for PD based on the strong signals shown in the first P3 study and use the next P3 study as confirmatory?
Can you repeat that? Was the question whether they ask us to submit an NDA with the data we have now?
Yes. Will
I don't
they?
think so. No. I wish, but realistically, no. And the reason is while the cognition data worked in the ITT population, and it's really solid. It's very solid. It was an exploratory endpoint. It was not a primary endpoint. If it had been a primary endpoint, the answer would have been yes, but it's an exploratory endpoint. So I think that if we do the same as in Alzheimer's, we do a 6/18-month study, we'll file an NDA after 6 months.
Thank you. Okay, question 16. If I have not been in your previous studies, can I join the open label studies for PD?
No, you have to have been in the previous study. If you have not been in the previous study, you can join our Parkinson study. They'll start in summer.
All right. Another question is coming in. Are we done with trying lower doses, 30 mg for the symptomatic? This is the last question, Maria.
I'm not sure I understood that.
I'll repeat. Are we done with trying lower doses, the dose of
Yes,
30
yes,
mg for symptomatic?
yes. I presented the dose response to the FDA because, as you know, we have been switching doses from 5 to 80, actually from 5 to 180, okay? We never said anything about those doses because. And what we found in the beginning sounded really confusing, but as we put together all our studies, it looks like the drug is 100% active as it's going to be, between 15 and 80 mg. Under 15, 5, 7.5, and 10 are not as good. And over 80, 120, 180 are really bad, okay? So the graph I ended up showing to the FDA for Alzheimer's and Parkinson's one over the other. They were overlapping. And then I show them animals, all the data we had in animals. And in all cases, we see a long plateau. It's not totally stable. It kind of goes like this because we have really small groups. In our phase 2A, we only had 10 patients per group. Basically, it is like this between 15 and 80, and then it goes down on both sides. So the FDA thought that was convincing. And so we didn't want to go with the lowest dose, which was 15. And 20 is kind of at the lower end. So we figured we take something that's very safe, 30, but is still in the plateau. It's nicely in the plateau. That's how we came to 30 mg.
Great. Okay, well, that's the end of the questions, Maria. We want to thank you, everyone, for your insightful questions and for participating in today's webcast. We truly appreciate your engagement and your interest in Annovis Bio's progress. A special thank you to Dr. Maria Maccecchini for her informative presentation and for sharing the company's recent developments and future plans. As a reminder, a replay of today's webcast will be available on our website shortly. If you have any additional questions or need further information, please feel free to reach out to our investor relations team at ir@annovisbio.com. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to keeping you updated on our continued progress. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.